Ah, greetings and salutations, Afrolites. It is I, Afromandius, back with another video today. First of all, just want to humbly apologize for the 4-week hiatus. I know for all you 50 or so or 100 viewers who are watching me, I humbly apologize, and I just wanted to say life got in the way. A lot of things were happening. Not bad, just first of all, my birthday had passed, so happy birthday. Happy belated birthday to me. I turned 22, so, not really a hallmark birthday to kind of look forward to, but something to just say like, hey, I made it another year. So that had also passed, but I also, a lot of things were going on with like school and making sure that I had everything squared away for next semester. So, nothing really too scary or too like, dire that you guys need to know about. It's just that life, school, I just got busy. That was it. And I humbly apologize for the 4-week hiatus. But with all that being said, I'm back with another video today, and I'm here to present you guys with another, please sit with me, another Creating a Champions video. I know. Again, we're gonna, it's a process, but my thing is that with these short form videos, this can allow you guys to get introduced to these kind of characters, and instead of just me saying, this event happened and this event happened and this character got involved and this character's mom died, this is just kind of like a nice little breakdown video of what you can expect from these characters when I do eventually start writing and drawing these comics. So, with all that being said, I just want to say that, coming up with this video was kind of difficult because there were so many possible options I could have gone down this route. And I know what you guys are saying. Why did you choose a Creating a Champions video? And it's, look, okay, it's my YouTube channel. I do whatever I please with it. All right. If you don't like it, don't watch it. I say that as like I have thousands of people watching me right now. Again, where I'm at in this kind of position, is perfectly okay with me because, it's not too big to where people are like getting sick of it, and it's not too small to where it's like, some people are watching it. I know there are people watching it. So with all that being said, this video was honestly a little bit more difficult, to kind of jump off and go ahead, because in a technical sense, this is actually the second kind of chapter and evolution when it comes to divulging with this channel. Because, well, actually, I want to say this is the third chapter. You know what? I'm gonna grow a pair of kahunas and say that this is actually a third kind of like chapter introduction when it comes to this sort of thing. Because if I want to look at it in a sense, the Welcome to My World was technically my first chapter, because I have 4 separate videos, basically talking about who I am, where I come from, where did I go, where did I come from, Kanai Joe, and then, basically explaining my universes and the separate ones when it comes to that sort of thing. But then I also have my Created Champions and Building a Bastard video, which basically focuses on the heroes and the villains that are present in my universe and whatnot, right? So, and all the antagonistic forces and protagonistic forces that we are going to be focusing on in my story. So in a weird technical sense, when I say it's also the third chapter, I actually ended my second chapter when it comes to like all the characters that were present in not only the Great War Saga, but are also present in the mainline stories, right? So, when I came down to this sort of thing, if you guys want to check out those videos, I have different playlists explaining like all the bastards that I have so far, all the Creating a Champions I have so far, and the world that is built around me. Yay! It's all on playlists. Turn it on for background noise, or turn it on to, watch it if you want to, have some sleep aid or whatnot. But excuse me, my sinuses are a little messed up. But anywho, with all that being said, this is actually a really, really special video that I'm really excited to work on today, because in a technical sense, I've had this idea in the back of my mind for so long, and I've had this character, and he's just such a well-rounded, interesting kind of, I'm tired of saying character, we'll call him a figure, right? It's just, when it comes down to his story and where he comes from, it's just very unique, because he's actually connected to another character, and in fact, he's actually connected to quite a few characters that are already presented, and I've gone with the characters that are present in the Legend universe, because when I look at it from like the outside perspective of what characters are being presented in my like universes and whatnot, like most of the cast that we see are, basically built up around being just these foreign alien creatures. Like when you go look at the Chronicle universe, yes, you have like Jack and Rose and like Alva and whatnot, but most of the other characters are made up of is like metahumans and whatnot. So they are like, earthlings and whatnot, but they're just superpowered beings. But when you look at the Legend universe, most of the characters that are made up are not even humans at all. Most of them are just alien creatures, and I find that to be a little more interesting. So I decided to go with the Legend universe, and the character that we're going to be focusing on today, his name is Bolt. So who is Bolt? What is Bolt? Is he a bolt? Is he made of metal? Is he a lightning bolt? And to that I say, yes, he is a lightning bolt. In fact, I guess you could say he's a... Hey, Grandma. He's a lightning elemental. Oh, yes. I'm still back on the spree when it comes to elementals. So obviously, if you guys don't know what an elemental is, I've already explained that in my Yami Boros video, my Rockwell video, and my Kova video. So check those videos out to kind of get a better explanation about what these, this race is and whatnot. But to basically give you a nice TLDR summarization, blah, blah, blah. Basically, these are human-like beings that have the ability to control elements. Ah, cool, and whatnot. So what is Bolt? Who is Bolt? I already explained what he is. Where did he come from? So Bolt is actually kind of a weird case because in a technical sense, he was also kind of present in the Great War Saga. I know. I said in the last video that this is not going to be brought up in the Great War Saga, that we're kind of moving past it right now, but it does play an important role because in a technical sense, when it comes down to this sort of thing, both Yami and Bolt kind of have this weird, like, cross-sectional destiny to where they're just going to be fighting forever, and I'm going to be explaining that later on down in this video. But basically, Bolt's father, as I mentioned back in Yami's video, his name was Kabal. Kabal is basically like one of the top elite elemental figures in their clan, and I'm not going to be going a whole spiel. This video isn't about Kabal, this is about Bolt, but I'm just kind of giving y'all background information about what these characters are and where they come from, and basically, but Kabal was basically the leader of the lightning clan of the elementals back on their planet. And as I mentioned back in my last video, the elementals kind of had a great war of their own, a civil war, I guess you can say. So when it comes down to this thing, all the elements that are made up of nature and life and whatnot kind of sat on the light side of the elementals. There were light elementals. There are barely any now, but I'm going to get to that when I get to that. But then, on the other side were the darkness elementals, and those, were kind of made up of forces of nature that are a lot more destructive, so like fire. And in a technical sense, they try to get lightning into there, but that's the thing, is that Kabal kind of stepped in and said, we are not going to be a part of the civil war. We just want to stay out of it. We kind of want to do our own thing. So basically, when it's all said and done, Kabal and Lord Yami, Yami's father, kind of hated each other and didn't want anything to do with one another. And in fact, to spite Yami, he joined the light elementals and basically kind of gave the middle finger to Lord Yami. But basically, when all was said and done, all the light elementals were basically eviscerated, and mostly the elemental population was kind of decimated, especially the rock elementals. And if you want to know more about that, just check out Clay Rockwell's video. But basically, that's kind of the story of where Kabal is. Kabal is present in the Great War Saga, but he has such a minor role, and in fact, he kind of dies later on in the Great War Saga, so I'm not really going to go too in-depth about him. And, he just he's there, he kind of shows up, and he kind of, I'm still kind of writing out what he does, but all you need to know is that he is such a minor character that, it doesn't make any difference of whether he lives or dies, because in a technical sense, most, if not all, the main characters' parents die. So let's just say the older generation are kind of, kicked to the side when it comes to the new generation and whatnot. So that's basically the background check of when it comes to the, Bolt's lineage and whatnot. So it's you guys must be thinking, well, how does Bolt play into this sort of thing? And well, that's because before everything was kind of gone gone straight to hell because of the Great War and whatnot. Or I guess in a technical sense, when Cinderella Man gets involved with the Great War, there he is. There's my Cinderella. If I had a jar, here's a Afro Minch's Cinderella Man jar. Tink. So there's my quota for today. So I'll place that right over there. But basically, as you guys know, and as I explained in my other elemental videos, Cinderella Man wrecks house on the elemental planet. He stabs Yami through the center of their core. There's a giant soul gemstone that makes up the planet. He destroys that soul gem, and then the planet goes straight to hell. Blah blah blah. Tragedy ensues. Parents and children are dying. Blah blah blah. And whatever. So at this point, think of this as kind of like Superman's kind of origin story, right? They put a baby in a rocket on a dying planet, fire that rocket up into space. But here's the thing, is that it doesn't immediately go to Earth. No, it actually just kind of wanders through space all by its lonesome. So, in a weird sense, it's kind of been going through space for the past almost 18 years. And I know what you guys are saying, Afro, wouldn't that baby be dead? And it's yes, in a technical sense, but also no in a technical sense. Because elementals are basically nigh immortal, they kind of can live off of that sort of thing. But I know what you guys are also saying, because if you guys have watched my last video, I mentioned that basically when it comes to elementals, when they're born, they are known as formless. And formless or moldless beings. They're just these gray little individual blobs of matter that have the soul gem stuck in their heads, and the only way that they acquire their elements is by allowing their soul gem to absorb the elements that surround them, and thus they become a blank elemental. So sand elemental, fire elemental, ground elemental, sky elemental, cloud elemental. You know what I'm saying? Without that being said and done, so it's you guys must be wondering how did Bolt become a lightning elemental? And that's the thing, is that before he launched the rocket ship, he had placed a bunch of batteries around Bolt, pure concentrated lightning elemental batteries. I know that sounds stupid, but yes, basically he charged his baby to make sure that he becomes a lightning elemental and whatnot. These bulbs were actually just pure lightning bolts, pure concentrated lightning stones that he basically placed inside the pod as well, so that way his son can become a lightning elemental. And yes, think of it as a way for if they're not surrounded by the immediate element, the elementals can get these shift stones and basically acquire they can put some of their elementals in elements into there and give it to their formless children. That way they can acquire some form of element, right? So basically, Bolt's now flying in space. He's kind of growing up. He's kind of he's not dying because he has a supply of elements and to kind of keep him alive and whatnot. So that's another thing that I need to mention, is that technically elementals can eat food, but they also can survive of just eating regular elements. So again, I humbly apologize for all the snorting and whatnot. I think the pollen's got to me because my sinuses are hurting right now. So, again, kind of keep in mind that I'm human too, and my sinuses are kind of messing up. So I humbly apologize for all the snorting. Anywho, when it comes to elementals, as I mentioned back in Claymore's video, basically his mom, when they fired a beam, when the whole planet gemstone fires a beam of light at at Claymore's mom, she acquires this hunger, and this hunger kind of leads her to just kind of eating rock around her. If that, kind of a funny image, just seeing a woman just kind of eating rocks and whatnot. And it's just, that's another way that an elemental can live, is just if they eat their element. Kind of weird, but it made sense in my head. So basically, Bolt's kind of just flying through space all by himself, and then he makes it to Earth, but not the same Earth that Jack and Rose and Alva and David are on. They go to another Earth where Junito and Claymore and Kova are on, right? So he makes it to the Legend Earth, and then he crash lands into the Legend Earth, right? So, obviously he's still kind of in a comatose state. Like, he's not dead or anything, but he's very much like asleep. Like, he's in a what do they call it? Like, I guess hypersleep. I like whatever the science mumbo jumbo sci-fi nonsense that they be spieling in like movies and stuff like that. He's basically in one of those, you know. So, you know, with all that being said, he kind of, you know, he crash lands to Earth, and then he's discovered by a clown and a fire elemental. So, as you guys know, and if you watch my legend video, basically this is Bonk and Blaze. You know, Bonk and Blaze, you know, the clown and the fire elemental girl. They discover him, and obviously you guys are wondering, like, you know, Bonk, he's a clown by occupation, and I'm like, no, he's a clown by race. Clowns are a race in my legend universe. Not only is there a clown, but there's also a evil version of clown. But this video is not about Bonk. I'm going to have a separate video about him later on. But basically, you know, those two discover him, and they kind of take him underneath their wing and kind of realize that he also doesn't really have a home or anything. But in a weird sense, Blaze kind of feels like they should take him because, you know, one, she's an elemental and she, you know, respect of kin and whatnot, right? Bonk, on the other hand, is like, we got to get the hell out of here. That spaceship just kind of came out of nowhere and crashed. We don't know what this guy's deal is. He could be a threat. He could be a foe and whatnot. But when they discover him, Bolt is kind of like this fish out of water. He has no idea what the hell is going on. Like, he is, like, he's confused. I wouldn't say he's scared. He's more or less like, he's like, what is this? What's going on, you know, and whatnot. So that kind of makes him a more interesting character, because in a technical sense, all the other, excuse me, had a big breakfast. But, you know, when it comes to that sort of thing, all these characters, you know, basically that we know are kind of familiar with Earth. But Bolt, he's kind of this fish out of water, because for the first 18 years of his life, he's kind of just spent wandering in space. So, you know, basically, Blaze and Bonk take him and bring him back to the orphanage that they were staying at. And, you know, obviously with Mother Salem and whatnot, there's another mouth to feed. So, but, you know, Mother Salem is a kind-hearted woman. She's like, you know, okay, you know, we can take him underneath his wing. You know, does he have any parents? And they're like, no. And then she's like, okay, you know, then he's my baby now. He's my responsibility. So if you guys want to know more about that, just kind of look at my legend video, basically explaining and kind of going over what the legend universe is. But that's kind of the story that leads up to that point. Basically, Bolt and Bonk and Blaze become, you know, these security guards for hire. They become like muscle. Think of them as like the heroes of hire for Marvel. That's kind of my version of that. They're basically these kind of like, not to say escorts, because OnlyFans models tend to kind of ruin things. So they kind of, you know, they took the term escort and kind of made it more sexual and deviant than it needs to be. But basically they become bodyguards for hire, right? They become hired muscle. So, you know, they get paid to kind of help people. They're not professionals or anything, right? So, you know, they get charged like $25 an hour or whatever. But, you know, that's kind of how they make it. That's kind of how they get paid. And that's kind of how they, you know, survive and whatnot. So, you know, that's kind of the story up until that point. Obviously, Bonk and Bolt and Blaze are going to go on these, you know, not magical adventures, but they're going to fight the world government that is presented towards them, especially when it comes to Bolt and, you know, Blaze and Bonk. When it comes to down to that sort of thing, Bonk is kind of like fine with where he is. He's not in danger. His family's okay, so that's all that matters to him. But Blaze, on the other hand, is kind of like an in between. Like, you know, she's like, we can make a difference, but we just need a lot more people, and, you know, we don't have the ability to just go up there and just kick the government's ass, right? So then you look at, you know, you look at Bolt, and then it's kind of like a weird 180. Like, for some reason, there's just this weird instinctual thing that kind of connects with Bonk. I almost called him Bonk. When it comes to Bolt, he kind of sees Yami. Like, and now keep in mind that Yami isn't like, he doesn't look like everyone else, but just the name Yami itself kind of triggers like this weird like Winter Soldier activation word in his head. Like, like when it comes down to his pod, like his father kind of communicated to him, like in pre-recorded messages and whatnot, right? Just in case if the world did end and whatnot. So he kind of left him his diaries in that sort of sense. Like it left him different types of like voice recorded messages of him and his, of Kabal and his wife, aka Bolt's mom. So that's kind of like where, the term Yami kind of like, it's like a weird activation thing that goes off in his head. Not like he turns like, rogue or anything, but it's like we gotta, like, that guy up there, we have to stop him. And everyone's like, why? Like, I mean, other than the fact, like, yeah, he's a, authoritative asshole, it's like, we're living, it's okay for the most part. And it's like, no, we have to, like, we got to take this guy down. And Bonk, on the other hand, is kind of like, we're talking about the world government here. Like, that is crazy, psycho, cuckoo nonsense. Blaze is like, okay, maybe I want to take over and, de-establish the authoritative government, and whatnot. And obviously, when it comes to Blaze, she's a little cuckoo for Bolt. So, obviously they're going to have romantical interests and whatnot. So, obviously, when it comes down to that certain thing, they're going to be fighting all these different types of villains, and these villains have different types of connections to the world government. There are characters from the Black Parade that they're going to go up against. And I've already mentioned this back in my, Yami video and also my Legend video, so I won't really go too in depth because that's just, this video is focusing on Bolt. So when it's all said and done, there's a traumatic thing that happens. I really am on the fence of what I should. You know what? I've already did it for Alva, so you know what? I'm going to do it for Bolt. So basically, they become these town heroes and whatnot, and they're in New York. So they become these like main, like renowned heroes because they kind of freed them, quote unquote, from like the reign and the hold that that one of the commanders has on the actual like city and whatnot. So, when it comes down to that sort of thing, Bolt kind of teams up with Claymore Rockwell, and they kind of get the rest of the Rising Renegades involved, or in this case, like, Blaze and Bonk, and kind of Kova's help to kind of take down Dawn of Steel. I'm kind of still writing that out, but basically I mentioned this back in Claymore's video, but the Dawn of Steel was kind of having a hold over of New York City, and then, they kind of de-establish it and kind of free them. This peeves off, Yami, and I'm still kind of writing things out, but basically this is kind of where the like fall, or like the heroes kind of get humbled because, after releasing and kind of giving everyone freedom, that kind of goes to your head and you're like, yeah, this is easy. We can take on the world government. And then the world government comes to you. You're like, oh, oh, God. You know what I'm saying? But basically, this kind of comes full circle. This is where our protagonists meet our main antagonists, and then this kind of establishes the rivalry between Bolt and Yami, and then they kind of have their first fight, and they get absolutely decimated because he's the main villain. Main villain's always got to come out on top in the first fight, to establish how much of a threat they are. So basically, when it's all said and done, he kind of ties up all the the elementals. He ties up all the Rising Renegades and basically blows New York straight to Kingdom Come. Like all like New York is just gone. So, he drops basically a giant black hole onto the city, and just everything that was into the city just kind of gets sucked into there. All the innocent lives and all the people who have no idea what's going on but kind of heard some news about it, they're dead. Basically, all of New York is gone. All their like progress that they made is gone. Their hope of even thinking that can stand up against the world government, gone. So this is kind of like the humbling moment for the heroes, realizing that yes, this is reality and that this is something that they need to take seriously. But also this is kind of a moment of vulnerability between these three characters, because Bonk at this point was kind of like, you know what? Yeah, I feel like we could take on the world government. Even though beforehand he was kind of like, his realizations kind of came true, because at this point his family is now involved. They're basically on this watch list. So his worst nightmare kind of came true. And then when it comes to Blaze, her hope has kind of hurt, but she has such a strong will that she says, no, we can't give up now. Like, if we stop now, all their deaths, everyone's death in New York would be in vain. We have to keep going. And then Bolt's kind of suffered the most, because when it comes down to that sort of thing, he kind of led the charge into the fight. And then with him basically getting pimp slapped by Yami, he was put in his place, realizing that, no matter what is said and done, Yami will always have control. And also at this point, I'm going to mention this as well, like Yami basically stabs Bolt in the stomach, and that kind of gives him like his wound and whatnot. Now, you guys must be wondering, wait a second, hold up, Afro. I thought you said all elementals, have the ability to kind of like, move their body and is made of that pure element. And it's, yes, you're right. Mature elements have the ability to do that. So both Bolts and Blaze kind of are still, they are durable, but they're not, they're not made of their element just yet. They're still young. They still got to grow up into it. So, unfortunately, he does suffer a gratuitous wound on his stomach. And, this kind of leaves like a permanent mark on him, reminding him of his failure. And also the whole like black hole suction of New York is kind of a big wound as well. So, that's kind of the humbling moment for our heroes. But Blaze kind of steps up and kind of takes care of her brothers, and her brother and her future lover and whatnot, blah blah blah. But basically, she kind of comforts both Bonk and Blaze in her own separate ways when it comes to that sort of thing. Obviously, with Bonk being her brother, she kind of steps up for him, and she's basically the younger sibling and Bolt's the older one. So in a weird sense, the younger sibling kind of talks to the older sibling. I like kind of how that situation goes, is that although yes, the older sibling needs to be the role model for the younger sibling, and the younger sibling has to go to the older sibling, but sometimes the older sibling also needs guidance and needs to know what the right path is. So that's kind of their story. I'm kind of going to talk about that later on. But then she also goes to Bolt, and Bolt at this point is just decimated. He's sad, he's depressed. He realizes that even with all the power that he was given by his father and whatnot, he feels like not only has he failed his father, but also has failed the elemental, like his friends that surround him and his newfound family. But Blaze kind of cheers him up and realizes that, we all make failures, we all make mistakes, there are hiccups in our lives, but, there's one thing that always allows us to get back up, and that's hope. When it's all said and done, the last thing that we can always have is hope. So she gives him hope, she gives him motivation, and that's what allows him to continue to fight. So at this point, after the whole debacle when it comes down to the disappearance of New York, this catches the ire of Black Flight. And as I mentioned before, Black Flight is this secret or underground organization that is fighting against the tyranny of the world government that is in the Legend Universe. And so they recruit the Rising Renegades and Kova Rhythm and Blues, and they're going to have their own separate video. So, as if you guys don't know who they are, I've already mentioned it in my Kova video and my Legend video. They're twins who turn into bats. So basically, they recruit them and they get their stuff together. They train a little bit, and then the government, Black Flight, issues Bolt to have a star shard. And obviously, if you guys know what a star shard is, I'm not going to go too in depth. It's basically the bones of a star. So, Bolt stabs himself and becomes, super Bolt and whatnot, right? So, he becomes basically, in a weird sense, think of this as like a weird Pokemon evolution. He turns from a lightning bolt elemental to a light elemental. Ooh. Whoa, yeah. So, you guys, I'm not going to tell you why, this could be leading up to theories and whatnot, like can elementals evolve? So I'm just going to leave it to where, elementals can evolve and allow themselves to become better, stronger elementals. So basically that's kind of where, the light elementals come from. For the most part, think of it as just kind of like a means to an end and whatnot, to, and kind of think of it as like, poetic justice, that, the fight began with light elemental and dark elemental, and it will end with light elemental and dark elemental. So there's another great big fight. Yami kind of, establishes that humanity is going to die and elementals are going to be taken over. Then Bolt comes in and stops it. Yami's defeated, Yami's killed, and then the day is saved, right? So, that's kind of where his story is up until that point. But technically, this isn't the end for the Rising Renegades, because there is a sequel story that I'm working on, but it's actually not going to be focusing on Bolt too much, because in a technical sense, Bolt kind of has his story in the Rising Renegades, but in this story, it actually focuses more on Bonk, and it kind of shows like how isolated he feels in like the world that he is presented with now, because in a weird sense, when it's all said and done, when it comes to the actual, like, Bonk and Blaze, Bonk, did it again, Bolt and Blaze, they have at least some sort of community with the older elementals, that help guide and mentor them. So Bonk, on the other hand, is kind of isolated. He feels lonely and to himself, because he's the only clown that's on the team. There's no other clowns. So I'm not really going to go too in depth about like Bonk. This is a Bolt video, and I'm going to have a Bonk video later on. So, what role does Bolt play in this? And basically, with him kind of killing Yami, and as I made my established rule when it comes to who rules the earth, Bolt isn't really a leader type. Like he leads the charge into stopping Yami, but this is like a bigger responsibility now, because there's now this power vacuum that is being like sucked into this like weird dichotomy of this earth. And, people are kind of taking charge of like, no, I'm the new leader. No, I'm the like, So basically, Bolt, Bonk, and Blaze are now part of Black Flight, and Black Flight's kind of keeping charge and making sure that there's no like authoritative leader, and kind of keeping everyone on the straight line and whatnot. So, that's kind of what I have for him so far. And in the sequel story, when it focuses on on Bonk, Bolt basically is kind of there to kind of help Bonk kind of get back on the right path and remind him that, sure, yes, you may be alone, but you're not actually alone. You have me, you have Blaze, you have, all these other characters that are presented in the story. You do have a family. It may not be the family that you think it is or that you want, but we're here for you. We love you, and it's actually, I will say this, I will explain this moment to you guys, because honestly, it's one of my favorite moments I've written so far. It's one of my few favorite moments, but basically Bolt and Bonk kind of, they fight. And I love when, sibling characters or like, heroic characters who see each other as brothers, they, kind of fight and butt heads and whatnot. So in this fight, Bonk and Blaze kind of go at it, and at this point, Bonk and Blaze kind of reach their full potential, because as it's like explained in this sequel story, Bonk is not only a clown, but he's a psychomedian. Afro, what the heck is a psychomedian? I've already explained this back in my Legend video, so if you want more information about that, just check that video out, and I'll also explain it in Bonk's video. But basically, they are in Grenfell, which is clown hell basically, and they're fighting and they're causing destruction in this endless void. And so, when it's all said and done, Bonk doesn't really want to fight Bolt, and Bolt doesn't really want to fight Bonk, but they kind of have to, because sibling strain, they, brothers and whatnot. And so, basically it concludes with both Bolt and Bonk, or in this case, Bolt's kind of, it's going to sound weird, but basically he puts his like fist through he fisted his brother, but basically he puts his fist through like Bonk's chest. But with his psychomedian genes, he doesn't really die. But he uses this opportunity to open a portal behind him, and basically he, explains to Bolt that he sees him as a brother and that he loves him very much, but he has to do this. And, he shoves Bolt through the portal, and this portal leads to like Earth and whatnot, but he closes the portal because at this point, Bonk has his resolve to take on his uncle, Lord Slugger. And so I'm going to explain that when I get to Bonk's video, but it's probably one of my favorite moments because, Bonk basically hugs his brother and lets him know, like, no matter what happens, I will always love you. And whether I die here, if I die here or not, in another life, please come find me, So it's emotional, and I kind of feel like it's really good for Bonk's character because when it's all said and done, Bonk does love his family, and he does love his found family. It's just, with what Lord Slugger has done, and I'm going to explain that when I get to Bonk's video, Bolt kind of wants to end the Psychomedian lineage. But that's kind of the role that Bolt plays. Obviously, he's going to come back later on and help out Bonk. But again, that's kind of where I'm going to lead off to like Bolt and whatnot in this story. But obviously, there's also going to be crossover events, and he's going to deal with like Janito and Hoagie and blah, blah, blah. So, that's kind of where he is right now. So where does he like stand morally? Or actually, you know what? Let's go back to the powers and abilities because I could get through that right quickly. He's a lightning elemental. He can make lightning weapons. He can shoot lightning bolts. He can travel through power lines. He can absorb energy. He's he's basically a lightning elemental, and he can transform, and like he doesn't really fly, but you think of it as like a Spider-Man technique. I call it the Spider-Man, but basically he uses two of these fingertips and he like throws like a lightning whip to the buildings and he flies. Like that's how he travels. I know it's Spider-Man-esque, but I like Spider-Man, so sue me, I don't care. But that's kind of how he travels. So basically he's a lightning elemental, and as I explained before, the elementals use their elements to kind of conjure up weapons. He uses his lightning to conjure up like a lightning bow staff, blah blah blah, lightning nunchucks. So that's what he does. So let's go over like his strengths and whatnot. So his powers and abilities. So honestly, moderate strength. He's not like super strong or anything. Like he can throw cars and stuff like that, but he's not like on the same tier as like Alva or even Jack in that certain case. So, he's, what he lacks in strength, he makes up in speed. He is super fast. Not to, he's like, if I had to compare him to both David and Bolt, David having the, Will of Washington and the other side kind of allows him to kind of tap into that and, become speed itself. But with, Bolt being a lightning elemental, lightning is pretty fast. So, that he has super speed. Super durability for the most part. You can't really like shoot him with a regular gun. You can't like spray him with a power hose because, basically like the only thing that can hurt him is another elemental, so you can like throw him like at the like if prime Mike Tyson were to throw a punch at him, it wouldn't really hurt him too much. But if that prime Mike Tyson was like a rock elemental, then it would kind of hurt. But and moderate intelligence too. Again, he's kind of like a fish out of water. He's not really building machines or like constructing machines and all that. That actually belongs to Bolt. I'm gonna explain that in another video. But his battle IQ is pretty decent. Again, he's not like, coming up with these general, like, World War II, like, guerrilla warfare plans. But, he has decent battle IQ to where he can at least be on par with Yami and whatnot. So, that's kind of where he is with his powers and abilities. So, where does he stand morally? Obviously, he's a good guy. He's a good character. He's morally just, and, he wants to take down Yami, who's the bad guy. So, in a weird sense, he fights for not only, to get revenge for his father, but also fights for the people and whatnot. And, obviously becomes a, hero for hire and kind of protects the common man. And, he is the common man as well. So, think of it as like, people's like Superman and whatnot. So, he's a good character. He's good morally, and, he loves his family and all who is surrounded by him. So what does this character mean to me? This character is really important because, when it's all said and done, he comes from a lineage that has fought against tyranny and, in his father's name will continue to fight tyranny. So in a weird sense, as I mentioned back in Yami's video, Bolt and Yami kind of have this weird, like, not opposite side of the same coin, but basically kind of have this like dance that kind of goes on. And if that makes any sense, basically it's like a Joker, Batman, Godzilla, King Ghidorah, like rivalry, I guess you can say. So like generational beef rivalry, I guess you can say, because Bolt's father Kabal and Lord Yami hated each other, and Yami, Almaboros, and Bolt hate each other. So, you know, basically, when it's all said and done, Bolt has to play the role of being the one to kind of take charge and take down Yami, but also realize that he has to be a hero and has to be a shining light and a shining beacon for those who are underneath him and whatnot. So, you know, I'm still kind of writing his character, but when it's all said and done and how everything is turning out, I think this character would be really good for the younger audience, not younger audience, but like the preteens and whatnot who need to figure out where their place is and understand of what they want to do with themselves. Because how when we're introduced to Bolt, he doesn't know what he is, he doesn't know what he's doing, but as soon as he knows his purpose, he goes full charge and he knows what he needs to do and whatnot, and he realizes that he also has to protect his loved ones and his friends. So, you know, that's kind of, you know, what this character means for me. But I'm going to cut it here, you know, today, and I'm not going to make a long, you know, ending, but all I want to say is, you know, I'm glad to how these videos are turning out. I know I sound like a broken record, but honestly, I really am happy to how everything is turning out. I really love doing these videos, and again, I humbly apologize for the hiatus, but again, expect to see these videos every Wednesday or so, and just kind of, you know, kind of catch up on some things, and look out for my Instagram page because I also post pictures on there as well. But with all that being said, I am so glad and so happy to be back, and I just want to thank you all so much for watching, and I have been Afromandius, and y'all take care of yourselves, drink lots of beer because I know St. Patrick's Day is coming up, so y'all stay safe and, you know, continue with just watching my videos and send it to your friends and family and whatnot. I know I'm kind of mixing things up, but, you know, with all that being said, I'm really happy to how it's turning out, and, you know, expect to see a video every Wednesday or so, you know, hump day and whatnot. But with all that being said, I have been Afromandius. Thank you all so much for watching. I love all y'all. Stay fresh and stay frosty, Afrolites, and I'll catch y'all next time.